All right, it is time for Friday Reads. Yay! Hey everyone, it is Shannon, and I'm super excited to be here today and to share with you this video. This is going to be my first Friday Reads of 2022. I'm super happy to be here and to share with you some of the books that I have been reading. How I structure my Friday Reads is I share the books that I finished, the books that I started, and any books I'm carrying over week to week. As this is my first one back, I don't think I'll have any carryovers because there wasn't a last week, but I think what I will do is I think I'll do a wrap up of my TBR jar picks from my first TBR jar. The first one, the first four. I have finished those four, so I think what I'll do is I'll do a wrap up of those four, and then we'll just start in February with Friday Reads and see where things go. I'm letting myself be a little like follow the energy, see how it goes, try not to get too firm set in schedule, but I love doing Friday Reads videos, and I missed doing them last year. The videos I did just sort of like naturally became other videos, and then I'm like, but I like Friday Reads. So here we are with a Friday Reads. So going to start with some of the books that I finished, and I'm going to mostly be talking about books that I read in February, maybe only talking. No, there's one exception, because there's always one exception. Okay, the first thing I finished in February was Tiny T-Rex and the Impossible Hug. This is by Jonathan Stutzman and illustrated by J. Fleck. Stutzman, right? Yeah, there's no L. And this is a kid's book, as may be clear. This is super cute. It is a kid's book about a T-Rex who has a friend who's not feeling so awesome. So one of the things that he thinks that makes people feel better is hugging, but he's a T-Rex with tiny little arms, and so he's not really good at hugging, so he sets himself the quest, the adventure, the challenge of hugging. So I love this so much. This actually is the beginning of a series. It's the first in a 4-book series, at least so far. I read it on Scribd on ebook, and they have 4 titles, so I think I will be continuing this lovely adventure. I shared the cover and one of the pictures on Instagram, and like, it's just so cute. And one of the reasons why I decided to read it is a fair amount of the books I'm currently reading are pretty heavy or slow, so I needed a bit of a reprieve, and Tiny T-Rex came to the rescue. Highly recommend. Absolutely adored it, and it was like 30 pages. Next up, I read a couple of bind-ups, comic bind-ups, and that is Archer and Armstrong. I read Volume 1, which is the Michaelangelo Code, and Volume 2, which is Wrath of the Eternal Warrior. These are by Frank Van Letts, and I'll leave all of the information about the titles, authors, illustrators, and any creators I mentioned will be, as always, down below. So, because there's a lot of people, especially on the second one, for the illustrators. So this one I started reading I do an annual A to Z graphic novel and comics challenge. So this is the one I picked for A. One of the things that I'm trying to do this year is that when I find a publisher or a series or whatever that I'm enjoying, to just sort of like keep working through it and keep seeing more from that. And so last year I read Wrath of the Eternal Warrior as well as Ivar Time Traveler, and they're both from Valiant Publishing, and this is also from Valiant, and there is crossover. Well, the second one's called Wrath of the Eternal Warrior, so there is crossover, and this is actually one of the few times, sometimes I get frustrated with comics, especially some of the really big like X-Men type stuff, where like there is so many character crossovers and I never know where to start and I never know how much I'm supposed to know, and it just is overwhelming. For some reason with these, I don't know if I just read them in the right order, but I don't feel that way. I actually find it nice when I see a character that I recognize from one of the other ones, and I do feel like there's enough of an introduction that if you weren't familiar with them, it would be enough context. So anyway, these follow Armstrong, who is immortal, and Archer, who was the one with the bow, and Archer was brought up in like a commune / cult. He didn't know it was a cult, and he was trained to be a warrior, like in physical fighting and weapons, I guess, because he's got a bow and arrow, he's got a crossbow. So yeah, so this one's a lot of fun. It's sort of like action adventure, and I am continuing to read it. I've already got the third one from Hoopla. I'm not totally sure how I'm going to feel about some of the gender dynamics. There hasn't been tons of women in it, and they've definitely sort of been sort of like the typical roles that women get in a lot of media or mediums, and so I'm a little concerned about that. I'm not heavily concerned about that. I will see where it goes, but it's so far it's my only complaint. I like the characters. There's some humor in it. I find the action fun, and the stories are interesting, and Arthur and Armstrong don't really get along very well, so it's sort of like a buddy situation where they're not, they don't actually want to hang out with each other, but it's not super antagonistic. It's sort of, I don't know, the energy is just kind of interesting, and so I've been enjoying it for that, and I will continue to read the series. One series that I'm not sure if I'm going to continue to read, actually, is I read the second in the Charm of Magpie series, and this is A Case of Possession by C.J. Charles. This was in my second TBR I picked for romance. It's a historical romance mystery with urban fantasy paranormal elements to it. I read the first one, The Magpie Lord, like 6 or 7 years ago now, and loved it, gave it 5 stars. I was so looking forward to this one, and wow, it just really, I just was like, not sure about this, not sure about that, not sure about this, little uncomfortable about that, like all through the book. It felt very different. The first one felt like a closed, like a murder mystery in a mansion sort of situation with magic and the male romance, and I really liked it. And this one's got an urban setting, and they make it pretty, a lot of the places are pretty sort of seedy, and the power dynamic between the two guys isn't great. Like, there's this sort of like romantic power dynamic that's dominant, submissive at times, and is consensual, but then there is this sort of element where Crane, who's the protagonist, actually, it's not first person, but it is from his perspective, he really wants to keep like Stephen close to him, and Crane is a man of means. He has a lot of privilege. He is a very imposing figure, but he doesn't impose over Stephen, and they're pretty casual at the beginning of this. But it just sort of, I don't know. And also there's a lot of themes in this one, not a lot of themes, there's a couple themes in this one that I'm not particularly fond of, and there was the threat of outing someone, and at the time and the place that would land someone in jail. And then also the paranormal elements of it were pretty like, ah! And the title, like, Possession, is a little, like, I don't know, not misleading, but it didn't go where I thought it would, and it is quite explicit, which doesn't bother me, but I just thought I would mention it, which I'd forgotten. But there's just, and there was a whole element in terms of Crane spent a lot of time in China, and so there's a lot of history and people that he knew there, and there were just some terms, there was just some things that I was just like a little uncomfortable with in several situations in several ways. So it just was unfortunately a bit of a miss. I haven't quite decided when I'm going to rate this, I think it was like a 6.75 or something, like, and the other one was like a 9.5 or a 10 out of 10. So this was a huge, like, and I actively read it quickly. Once I started to notice that I wasn't enjoying it, I was like, okay, I have to finish this or I'm not going to finish it. So I am really surprised and disappointed that one ended up being not a huge win. I was just and also it's a trilogy plus a bunch of in-betweeners, and at the end of this one, there is the 2.5 story, at least on the Scribd ebook edition. It's only 30 pages, and the 0.5 is available online, and I would be interested in that because I like the characters that it follows. But I feel like there were just a little, and often it was just things like, I'm just a little uncomfortable about this. I don't know if I could be able to articulate if I feel like this is actually, like, there's something not good going on, or am I just uncomfortable with this for something not to do with the relationship. Well, the sort of wanting to have Stephen a bit more as a kept person. He didn't, but he did. But like, so there's a lot of like, so it's like that alpha thing. I'm like, I don't like that in any relationship, but it was a bit more because there was also the power dynamic already. But also Stephen is a practitioner, so he has magic and he could like, you know, he is way more powerful in that sense. So there's, I don't know, like for some people, like that is something that they really enjoy in romances. It's not something that I enjoy. I like when people are like together fighting against something else, not each other. And they didn't fight each other. So, and the chemistry is good, but it just, I don't know, there were just so many little things I'm like, not like just didn't work for me. So I'm a little stumped on what to do about that. If I probably, will I read the third book? Probably not. I'll probably read the 30-page short story and the 0.5er maybe, but I was just so surprised how many little things felt so different. But it has been a long time. I don't know if I read the first book now, if I would pick up on things that I didn't pick up on there. Are they even there? I don't know. It's obviously challenging to articulate, and so it just wasn't a big win for me. So anyway, what else have I been reading? So currently reading, I'm back to a series of unfortunate events. So I've been reading The Bad Beginning. I will finish this soon. I'm almost done. Doesn't look like it from that, but I really am. There's say at the bottom, I got these new editions, and it says inside, extra stories, extra art at no extra cents. So this is by Lemony Snicket. This is a reread for me. I am rereading it with Izzy and Kate Kelly, and we are reading 2 books this month, so The Bad Beginning as well as The Reptile Room, and the live show will be on Izzy's channel on February 22nd, so if you've never read the series, great time to jump in. They are very short, at least to start. They do get bigger, but this is like 140 pages, but like sometimes it's only one-sided because when there's a drawing, and the illustrations, like, so it's very fast. The illustrations are different than the first book, which I was very surprised at. I'll show one of them. Where do so, well, it's not great. So this is a good one. This is the first one. So they're full page, whereas in some of the other editions, they're just sort of like a bit of a banner, or they could be smaller. But I thought it would include the ones from the other editions as well as these new ones, and they don't. And then at the end, there is some extra stuff. There's a little comic. I don't know how much it has to do with some, like, how to be a paper magician, make a paper magician, I don't even know. So there's some origami or some activity at the end. So I'm looking forward to that. So I got the first 2 books in this edition, but I have the end of the series in the hardcover edition, so I might get all of them in a variety of different editions. I don't know. Anyway, so I am enjoying this. This is a reread. This is a kid's book. I really am enjoying it on reread. I'm remembering it more than I thought I would, but that might be because I've also watched the TV series, but it has been a lot of fun, and please read something else. So it's definitely got a dark humor to it. So there's that. Also currently reading, I am also reading What Strange Paradise by Omar El Akkad. I'm not sure how to pronounce his last name. So this one I am reading because it is one of the picks for the Canada Reads. Canada Reads announced their shortlist at the end of January, and the day before they announced it, my hold from the library for this book came in, and so I decided to give it a go, and I thought maybe I would try and read all of the Canada Reads by the what are they called? The debates. So if you're unfamiliar with Canada Reads, it's kind of like a book showdown. There's 5 titles that are shortlisted. Each are championed by someone, and then they have a week of debates where the books go head to head on whether or not they match whatever the theme of the year is, or the question of the year, which I can't remember what it is. I have to say, generally, they've been a little generic, like the one book all of Canada should read. I have to say, although this is beautifully written, I am having a really hard time with it. Just thematically, I find it so upsetting. And I feel like I will finish this one. I am halfway through, and I have a schedule. So it's a library book, so I have to finish it by the time the schedule is done. But it's a refugee story, and it is following a young boy. I don't remember how old he is, like 8 or something. He's definitely young enough that he doesn't quite understand what's going on. But as the reader and as an adult, you understand what's going on, and it just feels like just so hard. And it is timely. I think what, for me, with this kind of thing, I would rather read nonfiction than fiction on sort of like timely current issues, political type stuff. So I think I'm going to finish this one, but I think I'm going to abandon my challenge of reading the Canada Reads, because pretty much all of the stories have at least a part of it where it's a kid going through a real world political, social challenge, current, like, I'm not, one of them is historical, but I can't do that 4 in a row, back to back to back. And also it's really intensive reading, and I have to like really dedicate good reading time to it. So, and I put the Stone Angel aside so I could read this, because they're both Canadian and they're both literary. And I'm like, so anyway, one of my goals overall is to eventually get my reading to the point where I can read all of the Canada Reads shortlist by the debates. So I thought I would give myself a try at this, see if I can manage it. I think I can manage it in terms of the reading, but I don't think my heart can manage it in terms of the themes. They're all just so heavy. That being said, or challenging. And a lot of people read a lot of this kind of work all the time. For me, it is like 1 or 2 a year, if that. So yeah, I'm finding it a challenge. I will say though that I have already read Scarborough, which is by Catherine Hernandez, which is one of the shortlisted titles, and I really enjoyed that. But I do feel like the themes, when I hear people talk about it now, I was like, wow, I didn't quite pick up on that sort of like the overall theme, because for me, being a Torontonian, and familiar with Scarborough, and like it just sort of, there was just sort of a familiarity in some of the situations, and so I didn't think of it in terms of like thematically. Does that make any sense? Like it just felt familiar as opposed to learning about something. Although I was learning about something, I certainly haven't been in all of the situations depicted in that. Anyway, so yeah, so I'm gonna fail at Canada Reads, which is okay, and I let myself. I knew that going into that that it might be like no go, but that the goal was to figure out, can I do it, and what roadblocks do I hit? And for me, definitely the roadblock is, one, it's a lot of intensive reading time and it pulls away from the other reading. So if I want to do it, I have to block off February and March for any heavier reading. And also availability wasn't too bad. I ended up putting all of my holds on for the entire long list when it went live. And then by the time the short list happened, my holds started to come in. And then I do think they purchased more copies at the Toronto Library for the shortlisted titles, because some of them said like 2 weeks or 6 weeks, and then they came in with a couple of days. So I think they did purchase more available. So I belayed them, delayed delivery, deliver later. I did that for those. But as I said, I'm committed to this one. I'm halfway through it. Also, it's told in dual timeline, and I don't like dual timeline, especially for this, and especially when I start to figure out sort of like what that means for some of the characters. I'm like, I can't take it. It's too hard. It's just too hard. So that it's just not working for me, and it's not because it isn't good or anything like that. It's just, it's my heart. Just, I don't think I can take it. So I will finish it, and then I'll bow out of this year's Canada Reads, and hopefully my continual work on reading literary works and tougher works throughout this year will help me build up, and maybe next year I can get 2 in before I bow out. Who knows? Because they do the debates and you can watch them. So for me, it's real, like, it feels like it would be really great to read the books before the debates, because then you have the knowledge. Maybe this one will be up against Scarborough and I can watch that one. That would be awesome. Although they're both great. Well, I haven't finished this yet. It's one of those ones, it's so good, but the experience of reading it has been a challenge. Other stuff that I am currently reading from my TBR jar picks, I am reading Your Voice in My Head by Emma Forrest. Note for this, trigger warnings for pretty much anything you could have a trigger warning for. This is tough. This is a memoir, and like, it has been very tough to read. I'm about halfway through, and I'm just like every trigger warning, like other than animal cruelty, but almost anything else is here. It's a mental health. I can't even. It's so tough because some like lots of trigger warnings feel spoilery, but the ones here are heavy. So it's uncomfortable to read a fair amount of it. So that's been just light. And then I'm also reading The Midnight Folk by John Masefield. This one is my speculative fiction pick, and it's sort of fantasy, kind of urban fantasy. Oh, I don't know if I showed that. I showed a picture in my TBR poll. But the thing is, there are no chapters. There are no, like, breaks. I think there's been one. So it has been, and it's very dry. This was written in 1927. So it's 95 years old, and it's tough. I finally have the rhythm of it, and the story is quite interesting and sweet. It does have some outdated terminology, though. There is just outdated, not questionable. There is some stuff, not the worst of the worst, but there's some stuff that I'm like, but it's just dry. So I have to only read a little bit at a time, and I have to read it when I have good reading attention. Otherwise I would fall asleep. But it does have some animals, and it follows a kid, sort of like going into the past of his family, with some fantastical elements to learn about his family history, and adventures and stuff. So there is some interesting stuff there. It feels, I don't know if it's British, but it feels very British in the fact that he's like an observer. I feel like Doctor Who, the companion feels like it's the protagonist getting to adventure, but not do the adventuring. It sort of got that dynamic to it. So I'm going to keep reading that. I hope to finish both of those next week. On the radar, trying to keep some stuff a little bit lighter. My next Goosebumps is going to be Werewolf Skin. I'm hoping to finish all of the Goosebumps this year. I'm pretty close. I was at 11 at the beginning of the year. There's a couple that my library doesn't have, so that will be something a little bit lighter. Although reading that at the same time as The Midnight Folk might not be the best. Maybe I'll pick something else. I don't know. Anyway, so that is some of the stuff that I have been reading. As you can tell, it has been a bit heavier and more challenging. And to be honest, I kind of just, like, even the romance was, like, had all of these sort of, like, uncomfortable bits. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, I just want to read something fun. Which is why Tiny T-Rex and the Impossible Hug happened, so maybe I'll just read the next one. And The Archer and Armstrong has been fun as well. So let me know what you have been reading. Have you read any of these works? Can you read lots of heavy works at the same time? I certainly am not very good at it, and I'm finding it very much a challenge, but hopefully I will. I'm going to finish a bunch of the stuff. Actually, all What Strange Paradise, Midnight Folk, and Your Voice in My Head, I plan on finishing by the end of next week, without question. I want them done and get on to the next. Just because I just don't DNF. I don't know if I would DNF any of them. I just, and part of my focus this year is finishing things, so I think working towards finishing as a goal is totally fine. So anyway, it has been this is the first Friday Reads back. I wish there was something a little more lighthearted at the end here, but here we are. Werewolf Skin, that'll be fun. Hopefully someone gets to be a werewolf in that one. Maybe it's a costume. I don't know. I will find out. Alright, thank you so much for watching. I will be back soon with another video.